Okay, 2 Samuel 24. Again, the anger of the Lord burned against Israel. Don't know why, it doesn't say why, it did. Israel was doing something to displease the Lord. And he, the Lord, incited David against them. So he is, we'll find out in 1 Chronicles. Let's just go ahead and read this now. 1 Chronicles 21, verse 1, reads it this way. Satan, the accuser, the Satan, the adversary, rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census of Israel. So this is one of those times when God is sending an inciting spirit, an adversarial spirit, into the heart of someone to do something. David has been incited against Israel because of the tempting spirit, the adversarial spirit that he has been listening to. And I don't know what Israel had done to have the anger of the Lord burn against them. I don't know. I guess they were unfaithful in some way. But God is now looking for an opportunity to bring about judgment against Israel. And so he is sending a Satan spirit to Israel, to David, to incite David. And we read about this. Satan was in front of the throne of God in Job. We'll read in 1 Kings about him, God, the Lord, asking a member of his council, his divine council, his angels, to go and be a deceiving spirit in the ear of Ahab, King Ahab, coming up a couple hundred years later. So God can do this. God does do this. That's everything is under God's control, even the acts of the adversarial spirits out there. The evil inclination. So the spirit is speaking to David's evil inclination. Just like David listened to his evil inclination again in his sin against Bathsheba, he is listening to the evil inclination. In Judaism, the tempting spirit, the Satan, the adversarial spirit, is very different than it would become later on. And the tempting spirit, the adversarial spirit, appeals to our evil inclination. It really has more to do with our desire to do evil. We have a good inclination too. That is what compels us to do good and to do the work of God, follow the law of God. But we also have an evil inclination, and the adversarial spirit tempts us into following our evil inclination, which is what happened with Bathsheba, and this is also what's happening to David here as well. So the adversarial spirit sent by God is inciting David, and we read about God sending an evil spirit to Saul back in the days of Saul. So God certainly is able to send evil spirits to incite people to do things. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's tempting us. It means that we have an evil inclination that we're listening to because this evil spirit is whispering in our ear. We could say no. David could say no here. But David is being stirred up because of his evil inclination. And so the Spirit is saying, so he incited David against him, saying, go and take a census of Israel and Judah. There's again a split between Israel and Judah. They were never really united. So the king said to Joab and the army commanders with him, go throughout the tribes of Israel from Dan, that's in the north, where Dan migrated to early in their time in the land. So from Dan to Beersheba, that's north to south, all throughout the land. Go throughout the tribes of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, and enroll the fighting men, so I may know how many there are. David wants to boast in his might. David wants to boast in his military. At some point, after getting enthroned in Jerusalem, David looked around and thought about how great he was and how strong he was. He'd won so many battles, and he wants to know exactly how many men he has to call upon in his military so that he can take comfort in knowing how many he's got. But Joab replied to the king, may the Lord your God multiply the troops 100 times over, and may the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord the king want to do such a thing? So Joab is not too crazy about this. Joab is savvy enough and well enough aware of the Lord's prohibitions to put, for man to put too much trust in themselves. But he knows that David is stepping over a line here where he's putting more faith in his military might than in God. We read, Joab has lots of faults. We've read about a number of things that he's done which were below the belt, below the line. He's going to end up paying for that later on. But, he does have an awareness of God, and he does, I think, legitimately follow God. We read in that war they had with the Ammonites, during the middle of which the Bathsheba incident happened, where he and his brother were fighting a war on two fronts, with the Ammonites on one side of them and the Arameans on the other side of them. And, Joab said, let's see here, the Lord, be strong and let, this is in chapter 10, verse 12. Oh, wait, yeah. Be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his sight. So Joab knows that David is not supposed to rely on his own military might and strength. But the king's word, however, overruled Joab and the army commanders. So they left the presence of the king to enroll the fighting men of Israel. Now this wouldn't have been a very popular thing, because this would have gotten everybody to think that there's going to be some sort of war coming up pretty soon. David has plans. He wants to know how many fighting men he has, because he's planning on using them in some capacity, right? After crossing the Jordan, they camped near Aroer, south of the town in the gorge, and then went through Gad and on to Jazer. They went to Gilead in the region of Tatim Hodshi, and on to Dan, Jan, and around towards Sidon. They're making a counterclockwise loop around the city. They would have started in Jerusalem, which is in the south, kind of middle south, in the tribe of Benjamin's territory, and they're making a counterclockwise loop around Israel. Then they went toward the fortress of Tyre and all the towns of the Hivites and Canaanites. Finally, they went on to Beersheba in the Negev of Judah. After they had gone through the entire land, they came back to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. Joab reported the number of the fighting men to the king. In Israel, there were 800,000 able-bodied men who could handle a sword, and in Judah, 500,000. These are probably rounded off figures, I'm sure. So 800,000 able-bodied men who could handle a sword. And in Judah there are 500,000 such men. David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men. So once he hears the number, he begins to realize that he's been putting more faith in his numbers of his military men than God. And he said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Now, O Lord, I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing. Before David got up the next morning, the word of the Lord had come to Gad, the prophet, and David's seer. I don't know, so earlier in his days, David had Samuel. Samuel's been dead for quite some time now, though. And so since Samuel, David has had two guys, one called Nathan and one called Gad. I'm not sure if they were operating simultaneously and they would come to him kind of like back to back, or if he had one for a while and that guy died and another one replaced. I'm not really clear on that. If we could figure out like what order he had Nathan and Gad in, it might make it a little bit easier to clarify the timeline of David's life, assuming that they came back to back, consecutively, and they weren't operating simultaneously in tag team fashion, which I don't know. They may have been. I really don't know. They may have been doing that. I don't know. Typically, we really won't see that in years to come. In with the king-prophet relationship, typically. But, the God does have multiple prophets operating at different times. So, now they tend to go to different places. But I don't know. I don't know if Nathan and Gad operate simultaneously, or if one came first and the other one replaced him, and which one, which one was first, which was second. I really don't know. But we have read both of these names. Samuel, of course, was first, and he's long dead at this point. Anyway, so Gad is up. This is Gad's turn. I don't know where Nathan is, if he's still coming or if he's already gone. I don't know, but right now it's Gad's turn. So the Lord had come to Gad the prophet, Nathan's seer. Go and tell David, this is what the Lord says. I'm giving you 3 options. Choose one of them for me to carry out against you. So David gets to pick his punishment. It's like when a parent lets the kid pick one of 3 or 4 punishments after being caught misbehaving. Like, I'm going to do one of these things to you, but I'm going to let you pick which one. So Gad went to David and said to him, Shall there come upon you 3 years of famine in your land, or 3 months of fleeing from your enemies while they pursue you, or 3 days of plague in your land? So 3 years of famine, 3 months of enemies overruling him, and 3 days of plague. Now then, think it over and decide how I should answer the one who sent me. That's a tough choice. None of those are good. None of those are very pleasant sounding now, are they? Oh boy. All right.